Hey guys, welcome back to Kerbal Space Program. This is Sovakeen, and we are going to get started on our first mission out of Kerbin. Now you might see the 4 flights in progress. We'll take a look at that now just to get you caught up. We have our orbiter, which has now landed. It's not an orbiter anymore, but that's okay. It has landed very close to our base, of course marked as Base Marker Mark 1. Not going to be used for anything else. Don't need the Mark 1, but there it is. We have Jebediah Kerbin, who is sitting outside of the orbiter Mark 1. And Landfall, which is our flag, placed to mark the landfall of our first successful mission. We're not going to abort. We want to keep that there. So, this mission is going to be all about Minmus. Now, I did say last time we were going to go to the Mun, but I have decided that Minmus might be a better place to go to, primarily because I have yet to go there myself. So, first thing we're going to do, lander can. Now, this is going to be a mission about landing on the moon. Sorry, on Minmus. Gotta get that right. And on the eventual return, probably won't be for a while, but the eventual return, we will do a landing back here on Kerbin. So, first things first, we need some just-in-case modules for breaking apart this ship if I need to. Now, I call this just in case because everybody needs to be able to abort at some point. Last thing I would want is for my Kerbins to be trapped somewhere simply because I didn't feel like paying the extra however much that costs. That wouldn't be nice, right? Now we'll save the parachute. That will go on top. But first we need a structural nose cone. Now, there we go. Rocco Max brand adapter. That would be my tablet going off saying, "You have email. Next time, be smart and turn that off." Maybe I'll learn, maybe I won't. So, we have our emergency parachute, and we'll add a couple more. These radial mounts. They will go with 3 more just to keep everything nice and symmetrical here. That'll work nicely. Alright, so that'll be our emergency plan. Only use in emergencies. Now, next, we are going to need a way to generate some energy while we are there. So it might be a good idea to have a couple of these bad boys. Actually, let's go with 3 again, and we'll put them right in between all these parachutes. That should be pretty good. Yeah, that'll work. And of course, because we're making a lander, we are going to need some way to actually land. Now, we'll go with 4 landing struts. Might as well have them on that part there, because if we have to break this off, we don't need to save the landing legs. That's a given. And it's always good to have a ladder, as the Kerbals might decide to get down and explore a little bit. And hey, they're allowed to do that, right? Now, let's see. How long do we need that? I would rather have too much than too little. So let's get that back to 1. Snap it on right there. That'll work nicely. That will do it. All right, so there is our lander craft right there. That'll work wonderfully. Of course, that'll only work for landing. And I just realized it won't work very well for landing at all, because I have no fuel or rockets. Can't really burn retrograde if you have nothing to burn. So we'll get one of our little Rocco Max fuel tanks. Don't need a big one. This little one will do fine. And we'll add a few of these. Let's make it 4 symmetrical here. Yeah, that'll still give enough room on the ladder. And our landing legs. Still have 4. We'll put them right at the edge there. Yeah, that'll work nicely. Yes, I'm happy with that. Now, of course, the trick to this is I need just little engines. Don't need a lot. So these poodle ones will work great. You notice their max power is 220. ISP at sea level is 270. ISP in vacuum, which is really what we're looking for because this is going to be used primarily in a vacuum, is 390. So that'll be great for retro burning. And of course, there we go. Always little glitches. Just remember, it is still in early testing. And we are going to send fuel from our central tank here down to these tanks. Because we really don't want to run out of fuel while we're trying to land. Again, erring on the side of caution. And of course, we need some struts. So work here, we'll go from the outside edge maybe. There we go, one there. And this is just for stability's sake. We don't want anything to blow up while we're trying to make our descent at all. It's got to be nice and stable, nice and steady. Now, will those legs actually go far enough? I'm not sure. No, we might be better off. We'll scrap that entirely. I do a lot of fiddling around with this. That's pretty obvious from what has been seen so far, I think. We don't need those parts either yet. Now let's see, find some smaller tanks here. Yeah, that'll work. That'll work a little nicer, I think. All right, welcome back. Here we are. I have this reassembled lander legs. I'm using the 909 series of engine. They're much smaller, great for landing and killing the velocity when we need to. Be perfect for the mun. And hopefully we'll be able to bring our Kerbals safely home. That's always a goal. Always a goal we should strive for. Now, one of the nice things here is these lander legs will actually extend far enough that if I wanted to slip a little rover in here eventually to do some scientific exploration, I'd be able to do that. I'm not going to do that this time around though. Right now, all I'm going to do is add in a decoupler and we'll start building the actual rocket to get us there in the first place. Now this should have enough fuel to land us safely, do a little of exploring. See, I added some lights here. It's just nice to be able to see where you're going. And then get us back to Kerbal safely. That is the goal, that is the mission. So, now sometimes this does happen that it just doesn't want to attach. So you've got to detach something and do it all again. But luckily, in the newer versions of Kerbal Space Program, we can simply do that. It makes it nice and easy. Detach it once and we have no problems. All right, so let's move that up and we will start building the actual launch mechanism. Now, the part that's actually going to get us out into space doesn't need to be too big. We are going to need some control, though. This is probably going to be a little unstable to begin with. And yes, I know you're not supposed to do anything that's not perfectly stable. Blah-de-blah blah. But hey, this is what I'm doing right now. We're just going to add in that SAS module, and then we'll section down to a smaller size. If I can find my adapter. There it is. I'm going to go for as efficient as possible design here, which means we're not going to use the huge Rocco Max version of everything. Because remember, we're not going too far. But we will need a couple of fuel tanks, one 45 vectoring engine. We need to have that extra vectoring power to get this turning. Now, here's the fun part. We're actually going to need to clip on some radial decouplers. Now, it's always a good idea. I discovered this through trial and error myself. I usually put them down here, but if you put them up here, when you have this bigger top section, it's a lot less likely to damage anything if it comes flying off. So we will leave that up there and build our support rockets off of it. Now again, we will be doing asparagus staging, as it's called, where all of our rockets will fire off at once, and we will simply drain off into the rockets next to each other. Again, find my target point there and up there, and it'll drain from here to there. And that's probably not necessary to do that diagonal, but it makes it easier for me to keep track of where everything's going, because I can tell that this is obviously going to be the engine we want breaking off first. So I'll do the same thing down here. Okay, and that works pretty good. And then we'll go on this bottom part, right at the corner of the black to corner of the black. And do that again on this side. There we go. And that's how we set up our asparagus staging. Now, of course, we have to play with our actual staging down here, and I will do that, but not until I strengthen everything here. Last thing we want is to try and be getting out to space and have everything fall apart on us. So try and get that close to center as we can, and that'll keep everything nice and steady, believe it or not. Now, let's take a look and see what's what here. So, we want this one to break off. So, not that one. It's that one right there. See how it highlights. And then we want this one here to break off as well. Now let's see. Bottom one right there. Okay. I don't know how we got an extra stage in there somewhere, but oh well, we did. Then everything down there. This is our emergency stage. We will not be using that. Well, at least we don't want to be using that. And now we're going to make this a separate stage, because chances are we're going to want to kick off this rocket here before we launch these. At least we want to have some control over when we launch those ourselves. So that should be enough to get us on our way. And we'll call this the Sova Minmus Mark 1. Yeah, that's good enough. Now, that should be enough to fly. That should be everything you need. So we'll save and launch. Here we go. You notice I didn't use any towers this time. Not really something I have to do because I built it symmetrically. I have my SAS turned on. We are going to throttle up. And off we go. There we are, and we are well on our way. We're doing pretty good. Lots of fuel remaining, and here we go. And just about ready to knock off that first stage. Now we are going to turn to 90 here to get our Midness intercept. But we're going to be more worried about establishing an orbit first. I'm going to make sure that we're up and ready to go. Now you see how those radial decouplers shot it off at the top and then they fell backwards and down. That's what we're going for. When I had them down here, they shot out at the bottom and tilted in. And I wasn't quite so comfortable with that. Now we are getting up to our 10-kilometer mark. If we can get to our 200 meters per second at that 10-kilometer mark, then I can start doing my steep ascent. Otherwise, we might have to hold that off a little bit. Of course, as we burn more fuel, right there, as we burn more of that fuel, we will be going faster and faster. And as you can see, our atmosphere bar is going ever so slightly into the lighter blue colors there, or the darker blue colors I should say. So it didn't quite make the normal window we try and make. This is quite heavy, so that's understandable. Luckily we're going to Minmus, which is pretty good on the gravity. There's not a lot of gravity to worry about. Alright, so now we are up and we will start tilting over ever so slightly. We are at our 200 meter per second mark. And drop off 2 more engines. Now we are going only on the power of that vectoring engine. So we want to make sure we get nice and steep climb here. We just take a look out here. See our base marker out there. Apoapsis is still growing, which is nice. That's what we like to see. Now the reason we climb this steep, obviously, is because it makes it more efficient. It means that we're going to start leveling out our orbit and not growing that apoapsis too high too quickly. It's a little easier to control the rest of the way up. And this rocket should give us enough to actually get into orbit and set up some maneuver nodes to... We actually are tilting a little too far over to the right. We got to climb a little steeper here because that apoapsis is not growing fast enough. The last thing we want to do is reach our apoapsis too quickly. Of course, we're losing lots of velocity here from that initial burn. It took a while to get it back, which tells me that this is probably a bit on the heavy side. Yeah, we are probably going to end up having to abort this mission. But we'll see. We'll just keep going and we'll see what happens. Yeah, you see how it wants to start tilting down towards the planet. That's because we are losing velocity very quickly. So maybe this will be a good time to test our lander instead. So, we'll cut the fuel, we'll pretend that that went off. There we go. Stop circling quite that much. Now, this circling here tells me that I have this way off balance. I'm having to do a lot of manual controls just to keep it from spinning out of control too much. So let's start powering up our engines just slightly here, just slightly. And it looks like we're going to splash down anyways. So let's abort. We're more worried about saving our Kerbals. Well, now that we know that didn't work, back to the vehicle assembly building, please. So, what failed exactly? I think I know exactly what failed. And that is, we didn't have enough power in this stage to get us as far up as we needed to go. So what I shall do is replace it with that Rockomax jumbo engine. And again, have our 4-way snap on here. 4 is fine. It will make it. And everything will be draining into that Rockomax. That might actually be beneficial to us in this stage of things. Now, I'm not going to use the mainsail because we still need, well, that gives us a lot of power. We still need enough efficiency to get us where we're going. So we're going to use this skipper engine, and we're going to have to add on some support structure. Just a few, just a few. Now, the way our new staging will work is we'll have that go off at the same time as everything else, but these engines will now be draining into here, which should give us just enough to get us going. Now that parachute was a little much, so what we shall do there is we can either add on a nose cone, or we can head into control here and get an avionics package. Not the greatest little thing, but it might be able to straighten us out enough. Oh, that's not even going to fit. So we are going to go for a standard SAS and then top it with a nose cone, because it definitely needs that control. So we'll go with trial number 2, and I'll cut things here. Join me next time, and we shall launch this and see if we can get our mighty Kerbals, Bob and B Sharp Kerman, to Minmus, safely landed, exploring, and back. See you next time.